Welcome back to Texas Border Watch. I'm Jordan Elder. This week, more state and federal law enforcement are heading to the southern border. We're going to start with the Texas Military Department. The Texas National Guard has now been authorized to make immigration arrests. This is a new partnership with Border Patrol where, as long as a Border Patrol agent is present or a National Guard member can get to them by phone or radio, they're actually permitted to detain migrants. This is a big shift from their previous role, which was really a lot of deterrence. They would be out on boats in the Rio Grande turning migrants around as they tried to enter the country, but now they can actually make arrests. The Texas Department of Public Safety has also now been authorized to embed with ICE agents, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, as they do interior operations here in Texas. In both of these cases, Governor Abbott says this is a benefit to the federal government because Texas has been doing immigration enforcement for several years now. They know what works, they know what doesn't, and that can be an asset to the federal government. Now, IRS, you might be kind of confused why they're up here, but the new DHS Secretary Kristi Noem sent a letter essentially saying she wants to take some IRS agents and use them for immigration enforcement as well, specifically to dig into human trafficking networks, find businesses hiring workers who are here illegally, and then assist with other immigration-related tasks. So these two are currently underway. This could be underway here soon. And on top of all of this, the federal government recently authorized another 1,500 troops to head to the border. So that brings the grand total up to about 3,600. Now, as for who they are apprehending, we're actually seeing numbers go down at both of our borders. These are some recent numbers from Texas DPS. On February 8th, only 331 people crossing. The next day on the 9th, 303, and then on the 10th, 332. These are very, very low compared to what we've seen before, and it's in line with what Border Patrol is seeing as well. Here's a look at those numbers. This is a steady drop through the end of the last fiscal year, and then that trend has continued so far in fiscal year 2025. As you can see, this cuts off. It's not totally up to date. The CBP data is expected to drop even more when the January numbers come in. Now let's go to Canada as well. Data shows that the crossings at the Canadian border dropped at the end of last year, and that trend has continued too. Now these numbers are nowhere near what it is at the southwest border, but still, the drop is good, and experts are excited about it. They credit both U.S. and Canadian policies as reasons why this is happening. Canada also just agreed to more border enforcement efforts as they try to fend off tariffs. And on to another thing we're watching closely this week. Texas wants to be reimbursed for the work that they've done at the border for the last 4 years. And by the state's estimates, that's about $11 billion. I want to show you the breakdown now. Governor Abbott provided this to members of Congress, breaking down what Texas has been spending this $11.1 billion on in recent years. The biggest chunk is $4.75 billion, and that's for border wall and border barrier funding, grants to counties and cities processing criminal trespass arrests, and relocation of migrants out of small Texas towns. So that includes the bus program that Governor Abbott has become really well known for across the United States, taking migrants from places like Eagle Pass to Chicago or LA, Denver, Washington, D.C. Another big cost is personnel, deployment of National Guard soldiers to build those barriers and guard the border. There are also some interesting things on here like health and safety related services at criminal processing centers, investigation and prosecution of vehicle theft on the Texas-Mexico border, and then eradication of carrizo cane along the border, which is an invasive plant that people can potentially hide in from law enforcement. On the state level, Representative Roger Williams has introduced a bill that requires the federal government to reimburse Texas for all of these costs. The state legislature is currently meeting in Austin, so that's something they could take up in the next few weeks and months. Governor Abbott has also been traveling to Washington, D.C. He says he met with President Trump and high-ranking members of Congress about why Texas should get this money back. He explained it as a real estate transaction, in a sense. Texas has built all of this infrastructure and maintained it, and that's helped with national security. So now, since the Trump administration is putting more of a focus on the border, they can take some of those things over, But since Texas paid for it in the first place, the taxpayers should get that money back. At the federal level, Senator John Cornyn says he's also pushing for this and fighting for this. Not everyone agrees. There are some people in Congress who say that this kind of sets a dangerous precedent, and what will other states then try to get reimbursed for? But others agree, and they say that Texas has really held the line in a sense, and that they should get that money back. This week, Senator Ted Cruz is also reintroducing the Agent Raul Gonzalez Officer Safety Act in honor of Raul Gonzalez, who is a Border Patrol agent here in Texas. He was killed in 2022 in a vehicle pursuit. He was on an ATV and was chasing after someone who was in the U.S. illegally and trying to evade law enforcement. That's a relatively common situation at the border. People will cross, or law enforcement will try to pull over smugglers, and they will start on a high-speed chase trying to get away, and it does often end in crashes either for the smuggler or for law enforcement. This bill would make failure to yield to a Border Patrol agent a felony punishable by up to 2 years in prison. Now, if an agent is injured, things get more severe. That means the migrant could get 5 years to a maximum of 20 years in prison, and if the agent dies in the pursuit, it would be a minimum of 10 years in prison, extending to a potential life sentence. Each of these offenses could also carry a fine of up to $250,000. And the other angle to this is it requires the Department of Justice to report to Congress how often they're prosecuting illegal aliens for endangering Border Patrol agents. So more record keeping, more data coming in on that. That's all for this week's Texas Border Watch. You can read all of these stories in depth over on our websites, news4sanantonio.com or foxsanantonio.com.